The compositor is amazing. Once mastered, it allows you to do so many things that you probably could not before. By separating render layers, you can make adjustments after you render to different layers or even individual objects. Need to change the color of an object? Easy. Forgot to add depth of field? Easy. Forgot to even texture your model? Easy. You can do so much more with the compositor. You'll be spending time here if you want to replace screens, add 3D elements to footage, or watch a CG Matter video. I will be explaining every single compositor node. There are 87 of them in total. You don't even want to know how long this took to make, so I'm not saying that you have to hit the subscribe button, but it'd be a lot cooler if you did. Oh, also, if you want to save some time and grab all of the information in this video in a nifty, easy to understand PDF format to reference, you can get that for only $3 in the description below. My name is Daniel Kraft, and welcome to the Compositor Experience. The bokeh effect is incredible. It can add a lot of mood to your scene. The bokeh image node specifies what kind of shape that your bokeh effect should be, whether that's a hexagon, a square, even a triangle. This node can change the rotation, roundness, and other effects. It's useful when used with the bokeh blur node to create the bokeh effect. The image node is used extremely commonly. With it, you can import any image type or movie file supported by Blender to implement into your scene. Images that are dragged into an empty part of the editor will be added as an image node. In this example, I use an alpha over node to drag a smoke image on top of the other image. The mask node does not create masks. You'll do that in the image editor by going to mask mode, creating a new mask, and then once you're done, going back into the compositor and selecting the mask that you just created. Once you've done this, you're free to use this mask however you want. Using an alpha over node, you could replace footage with other footage. You could add specific elements over specific parts of your image. It's really up to you how you use it. You can use either the movie clip or the image node to import footage. The difference is this. With the movie clip node, you're working with Blender movie clips. You can edit, track, and mask these in the movie clip editor. Here you will not find the footage you've added as an image node. While the image node has more options immediately available for frames and offset, you can edit these options for movie clips in the movie clip editor. The render layers node has direct access to your rendered layers from your 3D scene. Most of the time you're compositing, you'll be working with 3D layers, so you'll need to get familiar with this node. What I like to do to separate my layers is put the objects in separate collections and create new layers up with this Layers tab. The RGB input node generates an RGB color value that can be shared across multiple inputs. Keep in mind that you can also drag and drop colors to copy over color data. The texture node does not itself generate textures, but instead uses textures from your texture panel. I found this is a great way to use procedural textures in the compositor, clouds or noise for example. Here I'm using it as a factor to decide which parts of the image should be affected by this purple hue. The time node outputs a value from 0 to 1 based on the progression of time from the start frame to the end frame. You can alter this output with the curve parameter. It's a little outdated due to the graph editor, but it is still cool that you can animate some sort of image fading in over this beautiful masterpiece. If you're wondering exactly what I'm creating here, by the way, so am I. The track position node provides information about specific tracking points such as the X and Y values. One example of something you could do with this is combine the speed output with a vector blur to fake motion blur. We will be getting into the vector blur node later on. It's a little more complex, so stay tuned. And finally, for the input nodes, we have the value node. It's used to generate a numerical value that can be used more than once in your node tree. The composite node is where all of your nodes connect. If you wish to see your changes reflected in the renderer, you're going to need to use the composite node. The file output node is used to output images based on the input provided in the settings in the properties panel. Something interesting about the file output node is that if you have auto render on, it will automatically save these files whenever you make changes to the input. You can make multiple file outputs from multiple stages in the input. This could mean that you could render out your passes individually just by plugging each pass into a file output and turning auto render on. The levels node reads the individual color channels of its input and outputs resulting values such as the mean or average or the standard deviation. I'll let you read up on that one if you want to. Now, there are tons of channel editing nodes available, but one unique effect that I did find is that if you separate all of the channels of an image and then combine them as RGBA with this node, you can find the average color of an image I don't know when you use that, but it's pretty cool. You can also plug an image into the luminance level and you'll be able to see overall how light or dark an image is. That might be a little more useful. The split viewer node is like a viewer node, except it allows you to take two inputs and display two backdrop images side by side. You can use a factor slider to control between these two, and an interesting fact is that if you go into the image editor, this can actually be displayed using the viewer node option. You can choose whether to split this on the y-axis or the x-axis. And finally, the viewer node. If you shift control click on a node, it will snap itself into the active viewer node. Now, how do you set an active viewer node, you might be asking? Well, you just click on it and you'll get a red bar on it, and that'll show that it's active now. All viewer nodes are useful when something is a work in progress and you just want to preview how it's going. But keep in mind, if you want it to show up, you're going to need to check this box up here that says backdrop. And if you want to adjust the size of the preview you get, you're going to use these zoom options, move or fit, in the view panel down in the end menu. I say end menu, I mean you just press N to open it. That does it for output nodes. Let's move on to color nodes. The alpha over node overlays a foreground image in the bottom socket over a background image in the top socket. You can use this factor slider to adjust how much of an effect there is, and you may need to adjust whether the alpha channel is pre-multiplied. You can look further into the details of that if you want to, but as a rule of thumb, if you're seeing weird issues with your alpha channel, you may want to check the box that says convert pre-multiplied. This of course is useful for layering your passes and overlaying elements. The brightness/contrast node adjusts the brightness of its input in an additive fashion, while the contrast slider adjusts in a scaling fashion. But all you need to worry about is that it adjusts the brightness and contrast of its input. The color balance node is part of the color correction workflow. This node can adjust the colors and values of your images and layers. In general, you'll use the lift to adjust shadows, gamma to adjust midtones, and gain to adjust highlights. It's very useful for adjusting the mood or the feel of your scene, as just a slight color change can change everything. I like to think of the color correction node as a color balance node on steroids. It combines the essential features of gamma, gain, and lift, also adds saturation and contrast, allows you to define where your midtones start and end, and adds channel-specific corrections. The only thing you can't do is actually adjust the hue of these layers. For that, you'll need something else. The gamma node adds a gamma correction to your image or layer. Now, gamma is a complicated concept on its own. Essentially, a gamma adjustment adjusts all tonal regions but proportionately less as the tones get darker. It's meant to correct the discrepancy between how our eyes and digital sensors perceive the world, at least how I understand it. This is a very top-level description, and further research would be necessary if you want to understand the concept fully. The hue correct node adjusts hue, saturation, and value based on pre-existing hue regions. So for example, we could take this sky and make it a lot more dramatic just by adjusting the hue of these blue regions in here. We could increase the saturation of the foliage by increasing the saturation of these green and early yellow areas. And we could make these cliff faces a bit darker and out of the way if we decrease the value on these pinkish to bluish areas. Hue saturation value, on the other hand, adjusts hue saturation value not in specific regions, but on the entire image. Hue is for shifting color tones. Saturation has to do with the power or vibrance of the color, and value has to do with the brightness of the color. An interesting use case is animating these values because they have inputs with this node. The invert node takes whatever RGB input you give it and inverts it, produces a negative. You could also use this if you're looking to create some sort of inverted mask using the alpha channel instead. Anytime you need a negative or something inverted, this is your node. The mix node is called the mix RGB node back in the shader editor. Now this thing is useful for all sorts of things. There are a ton of blending modes in here used for mixing images together. Some of my favorites that I actually use a lot are hue and color from this top menu. This is ways that you can actually introduce color into a scene. All those hue nodes, all those saturation nodes, they only can work with hues that already exist. But with a color or something like this, you can introduce color. Now I know many of you already know that you can mix images and things like this, but the main purpose of this is to mix images. It's nothing like the alpha over. Instead, it's meant to actually blend images or textures or things like that. Some common ones are multiply, add, screen. You could use this to combine different masks and to create more complex masks. You could even use this to engrave invisible watermarks into your images and then also decode those watermarks if you want to. I'm serious, this is a real thing. I'll leave a link to the explanation in the PDF. The RGB curves node allows you to make color and level corrections on a channel basis. This could be combined, red channel, green channel, blue channel. Something else that is very interesting is taking advantage of this black level and white level. If you're working with an image that has some extreme color distortion like this, you can actually use this black level and select a very, very dark portion of the image. Use a white level to select a very bright portion, and you can actually bring it back nearly to its original state. And I think it's based mainly on the hue differences that still exist. It's a very cool feature, and if we actually just add in some more color correction nodes back in here, adjust the saturation, we can get this back very closely to its original state. But it's also useful for other color effects and filters, contrast correction, fixing black and white levels, it's all there. The tone map node changes the way colors are mapped in order to properly display HDR images on displays with limited dynamic range. Sometimes this happens automatically, but this is useful for managing how HDR images are displayed, particularly, again, on displays with limited dynamic range. Where the alpha over node layers elements based on alpha channel, the Z combine node layers elements based on distance from the camera. Notice how none of these layers that I'm going to show have an alpha channel that I'm using. But as you can see in the case of the sphere, it is actually layering these effects based on how far away they are from the camera. It's a very cool thing, and it's useful for various niche effects, such as combining scenes with background matte paintings. That should do it for color nodes. I'll see you back in the converter nodes. The alpha convert node converts between straight and pre-multiplied alpha channels. Again, you can do some more research if you want to understand the difference between these two things more. It has to do with the transparency is calculated, but sometimes you'll notice these little jagged edges. But if you convert from straight to pre-multiplied, you may see those just go away. Some workflows will require you to work with a straight alpha channel, which is why this exists, as a lot of the images tend to be pre-multiplied, but this is one of those things that would take longer than 20 seconds to explain. The color ramp node maps input values to a color or alpha gradient. You can then adjust how this output is displayed by adjusting these gradients. There are multiple interpolation methods. One of my favorite is constant. It allows you to create some sort of cool NPR style. I'm a big fan of NPR in case you guys don't know that. It's used to colorize images, edit texture colors, and maybe even create alpha masks. As you can see, you can also adjust the alpha values. Again, it's all up to you how you use it. Alright, I'm going to talk about the separate and combine nodes all at once because they all essentially do the same thing. They'll separate or combine images into multiple different channels based on a given color space. These color spaces include hue, saturation, value, red, green, blue, luminance, euchrominance, Y-chrominance, luminance, chrominance blue, and chrominance red. They're usually used together with a separate and a combine, and then you take one of them out, and then you can edit that with like a mix or something like that. Either way, really useful nodes. You'll see these used a lot. The ID mask node is going to output an alpha mask based on the object or material index pass. The way that you set up these index passes is by selecting an object, going into the object data panel under relations, and change the pass index to something other than your other objects. It's also possible to do this with materials and make masks based on materials, which is awesome. After that, you're going to need to go into your view layer properties. First, make sure that you're in cycles, and then enable the object index and material index passes. Hit render, and then you'll be all set up. Now, if you plug in the index OB pass into the ID mask, you'll be able to select from your different index numbers, and you'll be able to select your different objects individually if you put them on different layers. This would be useful, for example, if you wanted to change the color of one of your objects in post, and you could just plug in your ID mask into the factor, and there you go. I personally believe there may be a better way to go about this sort of edit, but we'll get to that later. The math node runs various mathematical operations on its input. For example, you could add to the hue and that will adjust the tonal regions, or you could multiply the luminance and that's how you would adjust the total luminance. You're going to be using the math node for most edits that cannot be achieved with a dedicated node. Anytime there's a more complex edit happening, there's probably math nodes involved. It's worth getting to know some of these operations, but obviously you don't need to know all of them. The RGB to black and white node converts RGB input into grayscale using the luminance. It's useful anytime you need a grayscale or a scalar version of your input. So this could be used for dramatic effect or for texture purposes, anything like that. The set alpha node does exactly what it says it does. It sets the alpha value of an input. So if I make it 0.5, it's going to be exactly halfway transparent. 0, it's going to be completely gone. 1, it's going to be fine, and it doesn't go above 1. But notice how this has a scalar input, which means that this can be animated, so you could use this for a fade effect, transparency, really any alpha-related effect. The switch view node is an interesting one. It's meant to be used with this tab here in the output properties called stereoscopy. Now, there are dedicated tutorials on this topic that I recommend you check out because I'll have a little bit more time to talk about this. Essentially, whenever you're in a cinema and you see that blue and red effect, that's what this is for. It uses a left and right view to produce this effect. And the switch view node combines a left and a right view to give you a single stereo 3D output. So you could make edits to individual views on here and then combine them in the switch view. The bilateral blur node blurs images while retaining sharp edges, as opposed to the blur node, which does not retain the sharp edges. The iterations on the bilateral blur controls how much blur there should be. Both of these are going to be useful for things like blurring reflections, blurring specific layers, faking depth of field, for example, reducing noise, even though there's better options for that, and a few other things. Now, the blur node itself, you can adjust the effect of the blur on different axes, such as I could bring the X value up to 100, and it will blur 4 times as much on the X-axis. I'll leave it to you to experiment with all of these different filter types. I tend to use Gaussian, which is the default, so there's that. The bokeh blur node generates a bokeh blur effect using a bokeh image node with in-focus and out-of-focus regions. It's useful for faking depth of field and creating creative bokeh effects. If you check the variable size checkbox, you can actually use an input scalar to affect the size of this blur, a size of 0 being no effect. The defocus node blurs image input based on a mask or map input, including the Z depth. I found it mostly useful, again, when faking depth of field. The denoise node denoises its input images using open image denoise. It's useful for just removing noise from your scene. Here I threw at it pretty much the most noisy thing I could possibly create, and it spit out what we have on the right. Clearly, you're going to want to have more samples than this, but it is an impressive display of what this node is capable of. The despeckle node denoises input images based on area complexity, so it's going to look for a lot of deviation. And so if I bring this despeckle on, here you can see that we've gotten rid of a lot of those fireflies. This threshold is what you're going to adjust to sort of find those fireflies. Ideally, you probably don't use this node by itself, but it does a pretty good job of removing fireflies if we compare these side to side. The dilate/erode node applies a mathematical shape analysis filter. It's useful for effects around edges or expanding or shrinking masks even, and other creative effects. The directional blur node blurs an input based on a blur origin. It's useful for faking motion blur or making those memes, you know what I'm talking about. So the way that you adjust this is with this center here. I can change the origin of this blur, and as you can see, it's just kind of following wherever I set it. It's actually a pretty cool effect. You can also change whether this effect actually zooms. It's all there. The filter node applies various effects and filters for creative effects, softening images, etc. Things like that. You've got soften, sharpen, Laplace, that one, Prewitt, that one, Kirsch, and shadow. The glare node applies various glare-related effects and more, such as glow effects or fog or lens flares. I've found that the fog glow is closest to a bloom effect if you're looking for something like that. There are various settings such as a threshold and a mix with the original image. The inpaint node extends image borders into masked areas. Now, I don't personally have an example of this on hand, but this would be useful if you had like a small streak of transparency that you needed to get rid of. Control points, transparent holes. There's a few instances where I can see something like this happening. If you happen to run into it, just remember that the inpaint node is what you need. The pixelate node is used to pixelate input images, although it doesn't do anything by itself. You're going to need to add a distort scale node, which we'll get into later, before and after. Now, on the scale node on the left, this is where you're going to bring it to the pixelated size, if that makes sense. And then on the scale node, you're going to bring it back to its original size. And the pixelate node is needed in the middle, otherwise it's not going to have any effect. Now, this is cool and all, and you can adjust, again, how much of an effect there is by making this value lower and these values higher. However, I feel like it would be a lot more convenient if these settings were just in the pixelate node. The sunbeams node is used to simulate light scattering based on image brightness. It can be used to skip volumetrics, render times, or add flavor to a bright scene. It's a little complicated to set up, but here's what we're going to do right now. Go from this image to to this image. All right, let's make this happen. So first I'm going to take this image and I'm going to separate it into UVA, which is luminance, and then U and V chrominance. I'm going to drag the luminance into a color ramp so that we can get this sort of a mask, because that's what the sunbeams needs. It's not going to do anything without that. So we bring that in, and now it's going to use the white parts to create sunbeams. Perfect. Now I'm going to drag that into an add node with our original image, and that is going to create our sunbeam effect. However, I also wanted to cut out this bottom sunbeams and just use the top, so I created a box mask like this, and I will use that as the factor for this add node. Except it's inverted, it's just cutting out the top, so I'm going to slap an invert node on there and call it good. The vector blur node simulates motion blur using the vector speed render pass. There's definitely an art to it, but I can see how it would save some time. That does it for filter nodes. Let's move on to vector nodes. The map range node converts an input value range into a specified range. Now this is really useful if you need to clamp ranges, if you need to visualize a range such as the Z depth, except I think there's a better node for that. It's called the normalize node, and we'll get to that in a couple seconds. The map value node has sort of a similar function, but this one allows you to offset the value range as well as some other options. Now the normal node produces both a vector output and a dot product output. Now the way you're going to use this is turn on your normal pass and you'll receive something that looks like this. Now, you plug this into the bottom of the normal node, and now you've got both a normal and a dot output, and now you can basically put this into anything with a factor, such as a hue saturation value, plug that into the factor, image into the image. Look at that. So now if I bring the value down on here, we can use this normal ball here to essentially relight the scene. But this will be pretty common if you're making any edits involving vectors. The normalize node is immediately helpful for visualizing any sort of value range that goes beyond 0 and 1, such as the Z depth on render layers. As you can see, it just returns a white value, a totally white image, because the range is beyond 1 and so it will visualize as white. So if we drag this into the normalize and then visualize that, it will remap this value range from 0 to 1, and now we can actually see what's going on with this Z depth. The vector curves node maps input vector data to a curve. They can be edited on the X, Y, and Z. It can be used for a couple of things, such as adjusting the X, Y, and Z for the vector blur node. The box mask node creates a rectangular shape for use as a mask. If you select it with something else in the viewer node, it will show you a white outline of where the mask will be, and you can just put it in the viewer node if you'd like. You may need to scale it to be the same size as your image, but once you've done that, you could use it as a factor, or really anything else that you would use a mask for. The channel key node creates a mask based on differences in various color channels. You could use this to, for example, key based on the luminance, that would be the Y in either of these color spaces, or any other color space channel. I would not recommend using this as your green screen key, however, we'll get into that later. The chroma key node works based off of chrominance. You'll set the key color using an eyedropper, or whatever else you'd like. However, you can see that we're running into problems with this image, because as you can see, the newspaper is basically green, because of the reflection of the green screen. That's just a side effect sometimes. You can adjust the acceptance and the cutoff and all of those things, and you can use this for blue screens and green screens. However, I would even hold off still. There is still a node that is probably better than this. All right, now this next one is color key. Now this one works based off of a specified color. However, the difference here is this. It's only for situations where there's very, very, very little color variance. As you can see here, there is still some color variance in the background, even though it's very difficult to make out. However, it's going to cause the key to not work. What this is most useful for is honestly digital green screens. If you make a green screen in your render, for instance, or if you download some green screen footage from YouTube or the internet where they literally just put the color green in the background. In this case, since it's live footage, not going to work since the light causes some color variance. So the next node is color spill, and I'm going to demonstrate it with a chroma key node, although this is not the final green screen method. Essentially what it does is this. Notice how from our chroma key, we have a lot of green outline around the subject, and it's not very good. Obviously it's not very good anyways because of the newspaper, but when we bring in the color spill, it's going to try and decrease that effect. It's going to get rid of the outline, and it's going to try to get rid of the reflection. Now this next one is kind of odd out of the bunch. It's the Cryptomatte node, and this is probably one of the more powerful of all of the nodes actually. If you go into your view passes, well, you're going to actually have to be in cycles first, but once you go into your passes, you're going to go down to Cryptomatte and select something like object, render your scene. If you drag in your Cryptomatte render layers and then your image render layer, here's what you're going to do. Go to preview, pick, and now you're going to choose your matte objects. So it could be this object, could be this object. Now you're going to go to image, and you can see that it has perfectly masked out those two objects that you chose. From there, you can do pretty much anything you want with it. You could go mix RGB. All right, cool. So now we've made a color adjustment. And then if we want to bring this back on top of the original image, we put it as a foreground in an alpha over node, throw this in the background as an image, and convert to pre-multiplied. It's so good. And if you want to remove things, you can go back to pick and remove those objects, and they're gone. And if you want to add more, you can go and do the same thing. Let's add one way back there. So this is extremely powerful. You could use obviously color adjustments, blur adjustments, any kind of adjustment. So the difference key removes elements based on the similarities between both input images. So let's pretend that you have a green screen with a bunny. If you were to take a picture of the green screen with no bunny, and then take a picture of the green screen with the bunny, you could input the picture with no bunny in the bottom here. Let's just pretend that's an image, and it would find the similarities, in this case it's the green screen, and get rid of that. If you add a color spill node after this, it actually does a pretty good job. However, one of these nodes is probably easier. The distance key node is actually pretty similar to the difference key. It's got a couple more options, and it uses a different algorithm. The double edge mask node creates a gradient between two masks, an inner mask and an outer mask. This is useful for complex masks where you need a gradient or feather effect. Speaking of masks, the ellipse mask node creates an ellipse shape for use as a mask. You could use this for circular or ellipse mask, as the name would suggest. Another common usage of this mask is when creating a vignette effect. And finally, the all-in-one node for keying is literally just called keying. It's the keying node. And if you select your key color, here you can see that it just gets most of the work done. It's incredible. And you may need to actually mess with this dilate and erode effect if there's any weird outlines, and you might still need a color spill, something like that. Maybe unspill some of that blue. But as far as nodes for keying goes, this is the one that I've had most success with. Now, there's still going to be some problems that you need to work out, such as the newspaper becoming slightly transparent. Obviously, that is not ideal. If you're doing heavy keying work, I would recommend checking out a dedicated tutorial on keying in Blender. I mean, that is if you're even doing this in Blender. You could do this externally. The keying screen node is very useful for footage. Essentially, it allows you to use tracking markers to specify color gradients that will be used as colors to key out. It creates something called a plate. It's very useful for removal of green screens despite maybe uneven lighting. Maybe there's some off-color markers. Finally, for the matte nodes, the luminance key node. Keys based on pixel luminance. It's really useful when keying out dark backgrounds. Sometimes when you download effects, they'll have a dark background instead of some sort of green background, and you would use the luminance key to work with this. If there's a very distinguishable difference from the dark background and the element itself, you'll want to bring this high slider down. This essentially is the cutoff where any luminance above this will be 100% opaque. But that is exactly how you should be keying out dark background footage. Other things such as color key are not going to work out the way you want them to. The distort nodes are all about distorting or deforming your inputs in specific ways. The corner pin node, for example, distorts images by displacing the corners of the image. If you're planning on something like mapping an image to a screen, you're probably going to be using the plane track deform node, not the corner pin node. We'll get to that in a little bit. The crop node crops out any unwanted area of an image or clip. You'll be using these controls such as left, right, up, and down to control where this crop will occur. You could also make it relative to the size of the image instead of a set number of pixels. The displace node can be used to displace parts of an input image based on an input vector. You could use this for glitch effects, wave effects, or other distortion effects. What I'm doing here is importing a noise texture, which I've scaled using some value nodes. And then what we're doing is scaling it on the X with a displace modifier, using it as a vector, by 200. And this is the effect that we get. We could, of course, increase this to something like 500, but by that point it's just getting kind of silly. Next up, we've got the flip node, which flips an input over the specified axis. It can be used for mirroring footage, finding composition errors, things like that. You can flip it over the Y, the X, and a Y. As always, up to you. The lens distortion node is meant to apply distortion effects meant to mimic real lens distortion. This could be used for things such as chromatic aberration, fisheye lens, and things like that. This distortion slider right here will give you that fisheye effect. And then, of course, the dispersion will give you the chromatic aberration effect. Alright, now is where the video gets a little bit crazy, I'd say. Take a look at this composite we have here and tell me if you think this is the original render. And everything after that is just compositing. That's right. You can retexture your models after the render. Here's what you need to do to make this happen. Make sure you're in cycles, and in your render layers, make sure you have the UV enabled. Great. Now we're going to start talking about this map UV node. All right. Now plug in the UV pass into the UV. Now you're going to plug in this texture. It could be a wood texture. It could be any texture that you want into the top there. Great. We can preview what that looks like if you want to. Wow, that looks incredible. However, yeah, make sure that your scale is, you can offset, you can scale. You can do all those typical alterations. Anything that you can do to a texture, you can do to this texture. Now, next up, we're going to be adding a color mix RGB. Plug in the map UV into the bottom socket and the regular image into the top socket. And I'm gonna make this one overlay. And then if we view this, this is what we've got, and it's incredible. The undistortion node, or movie distortion as it is called in the menus, is meant to distort or undistort movie clips. So this could be useful for maybe blending renders and live footage to kind of match the level of distortion, motion tracking, things like that. The plane track deform node is used to add a plane tracked element to your scene using a plane track that is created in the movie clip editor. For this, I'm going to refer you to a CG Matter video. Go ahead and click this video that just pops up if you want to go check that out. It's useful for replacing screens, signs, or any other planar object. The rotate node can rotate images or footage. The scale node is a little bit more complex. It can scale the size of the output. So you can actually set this to be the render size, the screen size, but let's say that you have some sort of element like fog that is not the same size as this image, but you still want to overlay it. You can set it to absolute if you need to set it to something special. Go to your texture or image or whatever is the background, and there you can find the width and height in pixels. You can also just set it to the render size, and that'll set it to the size of your render. Stabilize 2D node stabilizes input footage according to movie clip stabilization settings. The transform node is a combination of scale, rotate, and translate nodes. It is useful for keeping a clean workspace where multiple of those nodes can be combined into one. And finally, the translate node, which is the third of nodes that is combined into the transform node. You've got the X and Y values in here, which allow you to transform your elements on a pixel basis. And while we're at it, I think I might as well explain some of these layout nodes. The first of these is frame. You could call this whatever you want by adding something in the label here. You can drag out these corners yourself, or if you just want it to automatically happen, you can grab 2 nodes, drop it in, or 1 node, it doesn't really matter. Any group of nodes you can drop in, and it will snap to that size. Speaking of organization, we've got a reroute node. This is like a subdivision of a node noodle. You just drag and drop it in, and you can reroute your node noodles all over the place. And finally, the switch node. It takes 2 inputs and outputs either one of them based on whether this switch checkbox is checked. You could use this to compare between results, or if you want to bypass node groups for certain sequences, seeing as this switch can be animated by right-clicking or pressing the I key. I'll update all these videos from time to time, so make sure to let me know if I made a stupid mistake. PDF, by the way, gets updated automatically. I'm just trying to save up for a better mic. And with all that being said, stay safe, everybody. Treat others as you would have them treat you. My name is Daniel Kraft, and without further ado, take it easy, everybody. Who keeps putting these in my video?